Hi everyone, it's Steph and welcome to the first towels in the 2025 towel series, Lemon and Lime. Using these two beautiful colours, we're going to weave up a couple of gorgeous towels with a simple pickup pattern. Let's get started. I'll be using my 60 centimetre or 24 inch loom and a 10 dent reed, just one reed and a pickup stick which I forgot to put in, plus my coat racks that I use as my pegs, a warping hook, a simple measuring tape, scissors, a measuring tape that I can clip to the weaving so I know where I'm at, some clamps to clamp my loom down, and I'll be using my boat shuttle with this, and also I've got 4 bobbins here, and because I'll be using bobbins I'm going to need my bobbin winder and a clamp to clamp that to the table, and of course the beautiful colours. I'll be using 100% cotton today, 8/4 size by Maurice Brassard. I chose these two colours, the dark yellow and the lime. They're such pretty colours together, and they also match my lemon and lime theme for today. I also mistakenly thought that I had a little bit of the lime left over from a previous project. This was incorrect, but I'll show you later on in the video. For this project we'll be using 1 heddle and 1 pickup stick, and it's a super easy pattern. The length of the warp is the length of my dining table, which is 1.9 meters, which is around 76 inches, and this will weave 2 towels. I'll be using my repurposed ribbon holder to hold the cones of yarn as I warp. A lot of people have asked me about this, and I got this one from Spotlight, and here is what it's called. It's a Semco ribbon stand, and for those who are overseas, I found a couple on Amazon. There's this one here which looks quite good. These are Australian prices, by the way, and there's also another one I saw, but I couldn't see whether the actual handle bits came off. But you can get them, and they're just ribbon holders that I've repurposed to hold the cones of yarn whilst I'm warping. So I'll be using my 10 dent reed, and I'm flipping it around so the flat part of the reed is pointing towards the front beam. The width of this project in the reed will be 50 centimetres or 19 3/4 inches. I've got markers there for 40 centimetres, and I'll leave them there because that's a really good width for table runners, but I'm just going to pop markers in for the start and finish of the warp at 50 centimetres, and that just makes things a lot easier when you're warping. I always like to attach my apron rod to the heddle as I'm warping. This keeps the apron rod in the same position and really just helps with keeping tension nice and even, especially for longer projects. I popped my yarn holder on the floor, and then clearly I'm never going to learn with wearing batwing sleeves whilst filming. But to warp for this project, it is warping through slots only and alternating colours. So one slot yellow, the next slot green, the next slot yellow, etc. Very similar to how you would warp up for a houndstooth. Warping was super easy and super quick. I think this was about 45 minutes in total from start to finish. I'm already loving these colours, so bright and cheerful and really pretty. Once warping was finished, I tied off the ends and just quickly did a double check to make sure I hadn't doubled or missed any slots. Once I was happy, I unhooked my heddle from the apron rod, unhooked my loom from the table, and then I wound on just a little bit. I use brown paper as my warp separator, which is just brown paper shopping bags that I've cut up, and this just seems to work the best for me. I always wind on direct towards the pegs when it's the length of my dining table. This really helps with tension and keeping things nice and even, and just remember to pull back a little bit to keep everything nice and tight. Threading is super simple. I just grabbed one bunch and snipped the ends down the bottom. I then pull out the green threads entirely and then thread the green threads into the holes. So all of your green threads will be in the holes and all of your yellow threads will be in the slots. After doing a few, you will get into a bit of a rhythm and find out which way is best to do that. I found it easier to do the green ones first and then the yellow ones, but you will work out whatever way is best for you. Continue this across the entire warp, so you will end up having all green threads in the holes and all yellow threads in the slots. Once I finished threading a small section, I grab 8 threads, so 4 at the top and 4 at the bottom, and then I pop a knot down the bottom ready for lashing on. I try and get the knot in roughly the same position for each bunch. That just makes it a little bit easier when you lash on and there's less waste. Once threading is done, I get ready to lash on. I grab some waste yarn and do around about 6 times the width of the loom. Tie one end onto the apron rod and then I wind up around about half into a yarn butterfly. This just makes it a little bit easier to handle. Then I unwind the butterfly as I go as needed. But to lash on, divide your little groups in half. Pop your yarn through the top, around the bottom of the apron rod, and pull fairly tight. This helps the yarn tighten up a little bit on the back beam, which also helps with tension. You can also wind on just a little bit to make sure that you've got plenty of room in which to put your scrap yarn on for lashing on. Once all of your groups have been lashed on, go through and tighten one section at a time before you actually tie on, and then keep doing this until you're satisfied that the tension for all your groups is even and the same. And just to double check, run your fingers along the warp at the back of the heddle, and this will really help to identify if there's any slack areas that you might need to tighten up. So now it's time to spread the warp so that we don't have those little V's down the bottom of the weaving. To do this, we do 3 picks without beating, so heddle up, heddle down, and then heddle up. Once we've done those 3 picks, we'll then beat those 3 picks down all the way to where the knots are, and you need to do this quite firmly, and this helps also to tighten up the yarn on the back beam for tension. Just make sure that you've got a nice straight line down the bottom, then repeat another 3 picks without beating, beat that second lot down to the first, and then we've got a nice straight line ready to weave on. I wound up the 4 bobbins in the yellow, and I'm definitely getting the hang of winding up the bobbins to get them fairly even. The first towel will just be yellow as the weft, and the first thing I did was weave just plain weave for a couple of inches. This will make a nice border down the bottom and also be enough for the hemming of the top and the bottom of the towels. So here you can see the 2 inches of plain weave, and I've just attached that flexible measuring tape to the side with a quilter's clip, and that'll just help me know when to stop the first towel and when to begin the second. Now it's time to place our pickup stick. We only need to place it once and it will stay there for the whole weave. First, pop your reed in the down position because we only manipulate the slot threads in any pickup pattern. So we're going to ignore and put the pickup stick underneath the first 6 slot threads. Then we're going to pick up and ignore alternate threads. So it's 1 up, 1 down, so that you've got 1 on and 1 underneath your pickup stick. So here, slow and steady wins the race. Go slow and try and do it all in one go, and it will make it easier. Think about tipping and lifting the pickup stick as you move it across, and that's usually the best way. So just saying again, we're picking up 1 and we're leaving 1, picking up 1 and then leaving 1. So we're picking up every second slot thread across the entire warp. When we get to the other side, we're going to go under the last 6 threads. What this does on the edge means that there is just over 1 inch of plain weave either side of the pickup pattern. That means that your edges and your selvages stay nice and neat, especially for a towel, and isolates your pattern to the very middle of your towel. Now you can go edge to edge with a pattern if you wish, but what that does with your selvages is they tend to pinch in and out at the sides, and I prefer a nice neat selvage. So the weaving sequence for this pattern is super easy. First one is heddle up and throw a normal pick, beat, then heddle into neutral, and then pull the pickup stick forward and pop it on the edge. I actually found the shed just a little bit too narrow to get my shuttle through comfortably, but I did work out something else, and I'll show you that a little bit later. Once you've beaten, push your pickup stick to the back and beat, heddle back into the up position and throw another pick, and last but not least, heddle in the down position and throw another pick. I'll show you what this looks like just with this sweet sequence, but I did end up adding on 2 more plain weave picks, and I'm glad I did because the pattern is just very classic and very pretty. But this is what it looks like without the 2 extra picks of plain weave, and you can see these beautiful little weft floats. So here I want to show you the total sequence again. So heddle up, throw a pick, beat, heddle in neutral, and I've popped the pickup stick on top of the heddle braces, and then it was really easy to get my shuttle through. Then once you've thrown your pick, then put the pickup stick towards the back of the loom and then beat, heddle in the up position again, throw a pick, and then heddle in the down position, and then 2 picks of plain weave, so heddle up and heddle down. So that's the entire sequence. So really easy, really simple and beginner friendly, and is easy to remember as well. So up, neutral, up, down, up, down. And I'll show you a close-up of what it's looking like now, and I've done 3 rounds, and here you can see the tiny little weft floats. They will shrink down just a little bit. When I'm ready to wind on, I like to use paper towel holders or any cardboard really to cover the knots, and this means that it protects the weaving. Otherwise your knots can distort the weaving as you wind on, especially if you're winding on nice and tight for tension. So that's just a little tip. Also, if you want to use a weaving separator, you can go right ahead. I've always just covered the knots and then not bothered with any separator winding onto the front beam, because the weaving is already protected from the knots, so there's no real need. Once the weaving got to 74 centimeters or 29 inches, I just wove 2 inches of plain weave for the hem, and at 31 inches it's time to start on the second towel. To mark the difference between the 2 towels, I'm just putting in 2 picks of scrap yarn. That will just help me when I'm separating the towels. The weft for the second towel will be in the green colour, the lime colour, and I have to say this towel ended up being my favourite. It was just so pretty. Once I got into the groove of weaving as well, I got into the habit of getting the shuttle to a place where I didn't have to worry about the edges. I could just weave, which was just amazing. I was also able to go on autopilot for the sequence and didn't really have to think about it by the second towel, which was really great. This was a really easy, simple weave, and for the texture and the finished product was absolutely amazing. This also is definitely beginner friendly, especially considering it's just 1 pickup stick, and really the only hard work is putting your pickup stick in, but once it's in place, you don't really have to do anything other than weave and weave to the sequence. This is what it's looking like right now, and it's just so pretty. Once the weaving had again reached 74 centimeters or 29 inches, I did 2 inches of plain weave, making the second towel 31 inches also. You can see there's not a lot of wriggle room, but I was pretty comfortable with that. But definitely, if you're not feeling as confident with so little loom waste, then definitely make your warp a little bit longer to give yourself a little bit more room. I was then able to cut the weaving from the loom, knotting it in small bunches up close to the weaving, and here is what it's looking like now. So here is what it's looking like now after a wet finish but before ironing. I wet finished this in my washing machine on a fairly hot wash because I wanted it to shrink up really well. And this is before ironing, of course, but I also got a massive amount of tracking, which I'm just thrilled with. At the beginning, do you remember how I told you that I thought I had some lime left over from another project? I didn't. It was limette. So if you wondered what the difference in colours between lime and limette is, here it is, smack bang in the middle of my towel. But it's all good. Like most mistakes, it becomes a design element, and I'm happy with it regardless. I gave both towels a really good iron, and now we're ready to sew. To separate the towels safely without everything fraying, I just zigzagged at the very bottom and the very top, right up near the scrap yarn, and also either side of those 2 scrap yarn picks that I did in the very middle. Then once everything was zigzagged and secured, I was able to safely cut them all apart without anything fraying or it falling apart. Also, the really good thing is that you can cut straight down the middle of the 2 picks of scrap yarn that we did in the very middle. While separating the towels, I also went through and just nipped off all of the tails. There weren't very many, and I'd actually forgotten to do that when I was ironing, which is when I normally do it. All the bits and pieces that I cut off will go into my basket that I'll use for a pet bed stuffing later on. To hem the towels, I just folded the zigzagged edges up twice and pinned, and then I'll just use a straight stitch to pin those down. I also picked up these new tags, and I really liked them because they're all different colours. I've just picked a yellow one here for the yellow towel and a green one for the green towel. All it says is handmade, and I'm just going to pop them into the hem and sew it down with the straight stitch. You'll actually be able to use these, well, theoretically, to hang them up as well. And this is what they look like pinned. And finally, just wanted to show you the finished measurements. So the width finished is 40 centimeters, which works out to be 15 3/4 inches, and the length is 63 centimeters, which is 24 3/4 inches, almost 25 inches. As always, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the reveal.